The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Mallorca Fantasy. Get up to $1,000 deposit match when you sign up at Mallorca Fantasy with the promo code SGPN. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently Friday night, June 27th, around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm as always, Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the preview of the two final matches we're going to see in Eastbourne and in Mallorca. We're going to break down the matchup between Fritz and Brooksby in Eastbourne, as well as the final between Griekspoor and Moutet in Mallorca. So before we get into the actual breakdown of those two matches, do want to briefly recap what happened last episode for the lock and dog picks, and we'll get into the deep dive of the preview of, once again, the actual matches taking place on Saturday. Starting off with the matches that happened today, we had a pretty decent episode as we did win the lock, did lose the dog. For the lock, nice win, as we ended up having the Fritz and Fekina match over 22.5 games to minus 126. Really never in doubt. Fritz won the first set easily, then Fekina was up a break early in the second and coasted, and then eventually Fritz did dominate the third set. But either way, point is the match did go over. Thought that it was going to be a war, and it was, I'd say, headed that way until Fritz dominated the entire third set. Not a problem, though. Got an automatic win after two full sets were completed, so never really a sweat there. Nice win for us on the lock. For the dog, though, a pretty annoying loss because we did pick Griekspoor to actually win the match against Felix. Problem was we did pick the team total over just in case, and instead we overthought it. It was even money, and unfortunately Griekspoor did win, but he beat Felix too easily, as he won and only won 12 games, as he won in straight sets. So point is, pretty annoying loss there, as we did pick Griekspoor to win the match, but got a little bit too cute with it, picked up a loss there. Nice win, though, for the lock. Can't complain, and we'll look for a sweep here on Saturday. Now, before we get into the deep dive of the Friday semifinal matches, a reminder that you can help support the show by liking and subscribing on YouTube, by leaving a rating and review as well on Spotify or Apple. Podcast available audio format only on Spotify or Apple. So if you do want to listen to the podcast that way, that's fine too. Just don't forget to leave a rating and review, and don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube. If you are new to the channel, hopefully enjoy the content. I think we got to 1050 for subscribers, so hopefully we're trying to get to 1100 by, I'd say, the end of July. We'll try to get there. But either way, point is, hopefully you've enjoyed the content, and hopefully you have been enjoying the free picks. But once again, if you are listening to the podcast on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Moving on, though, to the actual once again, reminder that we do have a new contest going on for the NASCAR Gambling Podcast on the network because they're having an in-season tournament, and as a result, we are running a free contest. Head over to sportsgamepodcast.com/NASCAR contest to make sure that you have a chance to win a $200 gift card, and make sure to subscribe to the NASCAR Gambling Podcast. Plus, a reminder, check out the merch store. We have a lot of great Tennis Gambling Podcast merch with sweatshirts, t-shirts, and mugs. High quality, very affordable. Recommend getting yourself something there. So once again, check out the merch store, check out the NASCAR Gambling Podcast feed, and check out the free contest for a chance to win a $200 gift card, courtesy of the NASCAR Gambling Podcast. Moving on to the actual deep dive of the recap of the matches that we ended up seeing on Friday. Overall, not too much drama. There was one crazy match that we ended up having. The others were pretty straightforward. So Mallorca was very straightforward. As you saw, Griekspoor beat Felix comfortably, never got broken the entire match. He looked great. Moutet, though, did end up beating Mickelson in straight sets, as he was actually in a pretty, I'd say, solid predicament towards the end of that second set. Moutet looked like he was going to potentially open up an easy lead as he went up a break early in the second set. Then he gave up the break immediately, then was up 15-40 again, did not convert. He also had a break point in the 3-3 return game, didn't convert. Then Mickelson went up above 40 and actually had 5 break points in the 3-4 return game. So it looked like for a second we were going to get a 3-setter, and then Moutet ended up holding out and then eventually did win the breaker in the second set as well. So Mickelson fell short. Serve was just not very good. Mentioned many times that his serve for a guy his height is very underwhelming, and it was on display on Friday because he had one ace in the entire match against Moutet. He won 58% of his first serve points, and once again, that's not good enough when you're against Moutet on grass. But either way, ended up seeing Moutet win in straight sets to make his second ever ATP final, first final since 2020 Doha, I believe. It's been a long time, happy for him, but either way, point is Moutet is into the final, but we saw no drama at all in the two matches in Mallorca. Moving on, though, to Eastbourne. You had Fritz, who beat Fekina in 3 sets. We called that, thought it'd be close, thought that Fekina would eventually fall short, but we thought that the price point was a little bit too expensive on Fritz, and it clearly was. I know he won in 3 sets, but the point is we thought Fokina would make it interesting, and he did. Rough beat, though, if you had the spread on Fokina, because he got buried in that 3rd set when you're on, I'd say, a great trajectory to actually win. But either way, Fritz got the job done. Not much drama, though, because it was 6-1. He was up a break immediately in the 3rd set, and at that point, it was over. But either way, point is not much drama anyway. But then you had the absolute war, which we actually did call almost perfectly, between Humbert and Brooksby. We did pick an absolute marathon, thought they would kill each other, but we did pick Humbert to win the match. That did not work out. Thought Brooksby, though, was being quite disrespected for the actual price point. Line actually climbed on Humbert, and I thought that it was expensive the way that it was previously located. I understood it, but I thought that Brooksby was very live to win the match, and he ended up, once again, looking sharp enough to win. Brooksby was able to overcome a pretty competitive and disappointing 1st set loss, which was another marathon because it was a 9-7 tiebreak. But you ended up seeing Brooksby serve for the 1st set. He was actually up 5-3 in the 1st set. He blew it, and then he also had a set point in the breaker, and he was able to blow that and still win the match. So impressive mental toughness from him. As for Humbert, I thought he played fine. The serve wasn't good enough, but it really felt like Brooksby and Humbert were constantly battling the wind the entire match. And it felt like Brooksby and Humbert just kept having really long rallies, and it seemed like you were looking at a spot where Brooksby was getting the better end of a decent portion of those long rallies. But it was a very fun matchup. It was very competitive, and Brooksby, who really had no grass success in the past, just looks great as a lucky loser. He lost in qualifying, and now he's into the final. Good for him. Just simply put, Brooksby has had a pretty rough go of it for the last couple of years with the suspension for about 18 months, give or take 18 months or so. He came back, won a title on clay in, once again, Texas, and then he was able to make the final here in Eastbourne. We'll see if he can beat Fritz. Fritz is going for his 4th ever title in Eastbourne, so Brooksby is definitely not the guy you expected to see in the final, especially after losing to Vukic in qualifying. But either way, good for him. Very fun match. Easily the match of the day. So point is definitely should be a pretty interesting final between 2 Americans. Fritz, massive favorite. We'll talk about that matchup in a second. But briefly before we do so, a reminder that we already have action on the final in Mallorca because we do have Griekspoor at 9-1. So we do have an outright that is still pending, which would be very nice for the sake of the outrights for the entire week. We're having a decent week anyway, but if Griekspoor cashes the 9-1 price, then that's definitely a very solid week for us. Hopefully, gets the job done. He's looked great, but we do have some rooting interest already for the 2 finals. Not for the Fritz matchup, though. We could have taken Fritz as well. Didn't like the price for that draw. In hindsight, either way, it is what it is. He had a couple marathons he got by, but no regrets there. And Brooksby, I don't think we had a line on Brooksby when we actually recorded the podcast because Bublik was still in the draw at that point, and Brooksby took his place. So Brooksby we actually could not have bet on if we wanted to even, so that was never an option. But for Mallorca, we do not have Moutet. We took him to win the quarter, and that was definitely a nice win for us too at 3-1. But we do have Griekspoor at 9-1, who has not dropped a set yet. He's not even gone to a breaker yet. He's looked fantastic. Hopefully finishes the job off here on Saturday for a nice outright cash for us. Anyway, looking briefly at the women's side, you have a pretty interesting collection of matches, as we saw a couple of straightforward matches in, you saw Swiatek beat Paolini 6-1, 6-3. Never been good on grass. She has not won a title in a while. Good for Swiatek, though, as she was able to dominate against Paolini. Paolini, though, really not looking that great over the last couple of weeks, and I'm skeptical of her, I'd say, overall upside in Wimbledon. I'll talk about that, though, over the weekend when we preview the women's Wimbledon, as the draw came out today. But Swiatek making it to a grass final, good for her. Pegula was able to drop the first set to Noskova and came back and won in 3. Nice job by her, too. I know that Pegula had a very competitive matchup a couple of matches ago, as she ended up losing to Samsonova in Berlin in that crazy marathon. And she responded by once again showing up in Hamburg and making it to a final. So good for her, beating Navarro in 3, beating Noskova in 3. She's been good. You thought maybe there was a chance she would end up stopping after Berlin because it was a very high-level match, and she ended up losing in a final set breaker. But she decided, you know what, I'll go back for Hamburg, and now she's in a final. So we'll see what happens there. As for Eastbourne, you have a couple of Cinderellas. You have Joint, who ended up beating Once again, I'd say she had a decent path. She ended up beating Jabeur in straight sets in the first round. Ended up beating the likes of Blinkova. Ended up making a pretty good run. So she's in the final there. And you ended up having Ila, who is also in a final. Good for her. She has been making a pretty solid run as well. I know that she was fortunate that Ostapenko got injured and hurt her ankle, but still, a nice job by her beating Gracheva in 3 sets today. So as a qualifier, making it into the final, very impressive. And as for her actual draw, has not been the easiest draw, but she's been getting by. Looking at the actual path for Ila, ended up having an easy win against Bronzetti in the first round. Beat Ostapenko with a retirement, killed Ystremska 6-1, 6-2, and then beat Gracheva. So overall, should be a fun pair of finals there in Hamburg and in Eastbourne. I would say it wasn't too shocking. Truth is, after watching Ila beat Bronzetti that badly in the first round, I actually liked her for a chance to be a dark horse to win the event personally. I didn't talk about it on the show or anything, but I did think that she was playing great tennis. As for Joint, I watched her beat Jabeur. Jabeur looked really bad, but nice job by Joint, who has really not had much grass success in her career, making it to a final there. So a couple of entertaining women's finals on the card for Saturday, a couple of entertaining men's finals taking place on Saturday. Going to break down those in a second. Anyway, before we get into the preview of the matches on Saturday, reminder they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is MyBookie, because they're available at a ton of locations. Use them to bet on baseball, to bet on WNBA, to bet on golf, to bet on football futures, etc. You can also use it in a ton of locations. Use crypto for deposits. Only fast payouts to Santo for your account. Just go to SGPN for a $100 match up to 1K. Terms and conditions MyBookie promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Circus because they are still hosting their Ultimate Fanciful Contest for 12-person elite draft in Vegas, showing VIPs for their stay. Limited ride from the airport, 5K tab from stadium swim, and hotel stay for you and your loving league mates. You can always get 50% off everything at Circa Properties with the code SGP15. Last chance to enter, though, the contest. Enter at sportsgamepodcast.com to Circa to enter the free fantasy football contest. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Scam Podcast. Finished going through the recap of the matches on Friday. Time to move on into the preview of the 2 matches taking place on Saturday. Starting off with the first match, Mallorca will be going first because Mallorca is starting at about, pulling up the times here, 9 a.m. Eastern, and Eastbourne starting at 11. So keep that in mind. Now, for the matchup here, you have Griekspoor against Moutet. Griekspoor, decent favorite, about minus 180, give or take. Moutet's around plus 150. For the spread, you have minus 2.5 for Griekspoor, or even money. You have plus 2.5 for Moutet at minus 120. Can go for the spread, though. You can get Griekspoor minus 1.5 at minus 140. You get Moutet plus 1.5 at plus 109. The over-under in games at 23.5. The over is plus 100. The under is minus 120. For the actual set spread, you have Griekspoor in straight sets at plus 146. Moutet to win in straight sets at plus 330. The over 2.5 sets is around plus 130. Faced off 2 times before. Very dated. Faced off back in 2018. So a long time ago. But you saw Griekspoor kill him in 2 straight matches, beat him in Orleans and beat him in Antwerp, and did not drop more than 4 games in a single set. That was 7 years ago. It means absolutely nothing, but I'm mentioning the head-to-head for the sake of it. Now, for the path of both players, you've seen Griekspoor coast, beating Quinn, 7-5, 6-4, beating Diallo, 6-4, 6-4, and beating, once again, Felix, 6-4, 6-4. So Griekspoor has been fantastic in the event so far, and you're looking at him beating decent competition. Diallo, when a grass tied a couple weeks ago, we know Felix can be dangerous on grass. He's a head case, and we saw that on full display again on Friday. I can't stand watching Felix play tennis. So much talent, but such little tennis IQ. It's really just on display every time I watch him play. But either way, a point is still a good win nonetheless. As for the actual path for Moutet, bit more difficult. Had a 3-setter against Martinez, beat Altmaier in straight sets, beat Tien in straight sets, and beat Mickelson in straight sets. So I think I'd argue that Griekspoor had the tougher competition, beating the likes of Diallo and Felix on grass. Moutet, though, beat Mickelson, who is a pretty good grass player. As all of you know, I'm not the biggest Mickelson guy, as I just think his serve is really in need of drastic improvement, and I have not seen any strides to improve it, which is embarrassing, I think. I wonder what certain coaches do. You know that you have a guy who's pretty solid in terms of consistency on both wings. Mickelson, decent hands at the net, not a bad volleyer by any means. The serve, though, for his size, is such a liability, and I'm just wondering why they haven't tried to address that over the course of his young career. He needs a better serve. I've mentioned it many times before, and I do think it's going to be a serious I'd say, liability over the course of his career unless he gets it fixed. But either way, Griekspoor, once again, has had, in my opinion, a tougher level of competition. Tien, not much of a grass resume, did beat Shelton. Shelton's been a mess, though, on grass. But you're looking at the competition. Altmaier's a clay guy. Martinez is a clay guy. Tien is a young American who could be good on grass. Very solid ground strokes, but still not exactly known for his grass resume. And Mickelson is a good win. I'll give him that as well. But for the actual matchup itself, I think Griekspoor should win this. Moutet, I said before, is in his first ever I should say second ever ATP final, first ATP final in about 5 years. He's never won an ATP title before. Nerves could play a factor. He's been very good, and we do know that his variety can be tricky to deal with. The problem for him is Griekspoor is actually very good at the net, so drop shots and underarm serves might actually be a net negative because you're bringing Griekspoor into the net, who's pretty comfortable by the net. And Griekspoor's serve has been very solid. We know that he can bomb it up the middle. He's also able to serve and volley, which has been an effective tactic for him in the event. Moutet never makes it easy because he's going to show variety, going to make it difficult for his opponents with the slice, with the very interesting looping forehand. Having said that, I do think that Griekspoor is a guy that should give Moutet problems. And I do think with his firepower advantage, unlike Mickelson, he can serve significantly better and force Moutet off balance, and I do think he can come to the net to put points away quickly. Plus, Griekspoor, who does have some returning issues over the years, has been quite comfortable returning on the grass courts here. He handled Felix's serves pretty easily, I'd say, over the course of the matchup, and I do think that he can handle Moutet's serve. I just see more chances for Griekspoor in this matchup when it comes to taking a stranglehold on sets. Griekspoor might get broken a time or two. I will give Moutet props for being a good returner. But I do think Griekspoor's playstyle, and I do think his willingness to come forward will frustrate Moutet, and I do think that Moutet's serve, which was definitely getting the job done against Mickelson, I think Griekspoor will be more aggressive when it comes to the return, and I just think Griekspoor, who's won multiple titles before on the ATP Tour, will handle the actual environment better. Moutet, we know, can be very emotionally unstable at times, and with him having a chance to win his first ever title on the ATP Tour, first final in 5 years, there are some nerves there. I'm just going to throw it out there. I think Griekspoor is the better player. That's why we took him to win the actual event. I'll go with him to win this one as well. I'll go with the spread. I think Moutet will make one set competitive maybe. Maybe it even goes 3. But I think Griekspoor will have easier holes, and I do think Griekspoor's net game will be a pretty difficult element of the game for Moutet to deal with. I'm going Griekspoor. I think he's just a better player, and I do think Griekspoor, in terms of talent, is significantly better than anybody that Moutet's beaten so far in the event. Mickelson is fine. I think Griekspoor's upside is top 20. Mickelson, I think, is more along the lines of... I always thought Mickelson was more of like a top 40 guy, if I had to actually rank him. He's 33 right now. Sounds about right. I think he's in that 30 to 40 range. Griekspoor, though, is 34. So technically, Mickelson is better than him in terms of ranking. But he's won multiple titles. Griekspoor, we know, almost beat Zverev in, for example, the French Open last year. He has been capable of pulling off big upsets. He beat Zverev earlier this year. He definitely can showcase some serious skills, and I do think he's the much better player in this matchup. And the serve should be, in my opinion, the biggest weapon for Griekspoor to use over the course of this matchup. So give me Griekspoor in this one, maybe in straight sets, but I think it will be closer than that. I think it might end up going to a breaker in one of the sets. But give me Griekspoor to get the job done in this one. Moving on to the next matchup, looking at the matchup between Brooksby and Fritz. Faced off this year in the Australian Open, actually, and you saw Fritz kill him as Fritz dropped 5 games in the entire match. Faced off, though, in the US Open 2021, and Brooksby did beat Fritz in 4 sets. Now, looking at the matchup, and the pricing, Fritz a massive favorite, minus 340, going for his 4th title in Eastbourne. Brooksby going for a second ever title, and a second title this year on the ATP level at plus 274. For the spread, you have minus 3.5 for Fritz, plus 3.5 for Brooksby. The over-under is at 22.5. Over is even money. The under is minus 120. For the set spread, you have Fritz in straight sets at minus 120. Brooksby to win a set is minus 110. Brooksby in straight sets is actually plus 560. For the over 2.5 sets, I see plus 153. For the path of both players, Fritz has had a pretty difficult path, but he survived. He had a 3-setter against Fonseca, which did get also delayed for the final set. Beat Giron in a final set as well, so that went the distance, and he beat Fokina in a third set as well. So Fritz has actually not won a single match in straight sets in the event, but survived an advance, and he's back into a final. Brooksby, though, has been the opposite. Lost in the qualifying to Vukic, got a lucky loser draw because Bublik dropped out, and he dropped one set in the entire event. Ended up beating Komisanya in straight sets, beat Borders in straight sets, beat Evans in straight sets, and lost the first set to Humbert, which he should have won. He was up 5-3 and then choked it, but he came back and he won in 3 sets anyway. Now, the question is, with Fritz being this comfortable on the courts in Eastbourne, do I think the price is fair? No, I don't. I thought that Fokina was too big of a price, and I think Brooksby is in great form. And he's looking the part. It's not like a fluky collection of wins for Brooksby. He looks great. I think Brooksby can definitely keep this match competitive. If Fokina can win a set, I don't know why Brooksby can't. I think Fritz is a guy who has had some issues dealing with the wind in Eastbourne. He's been fine for the most part because his serve has been so lethal. But I do think there are some opportunities for Brooksby to make it interesting when it comes to the rally game. I do think he can force a lot of long rallies, which can frustrate Fritz. And if the wind is going to act up, spoiler, it should. It's supposed to be about 15-mile-per-hour winds or so in the matchup here. Wind gusts of about 23 miles per hour. I'll put it this way. I think that the wind actually favors Brooksby in this matchup because Fritz, we know, can hit errors, a lot of questionable shot selection. Brooksby will keep the ball in play, force Fritz to self-destruct, and I do think it should be a decent overall spot condition-wise for Brooksby. Now, I want to point out the Australian Open matchup they had earlier this year because Fritz killed him. That was Brooksby's first match in about 2 years because he had the suspension. So I do want to point out that even though they faced off in the Australian Open and Fritz dominated, first of all, there was no bad weather in that matchup. There is bad weather expected for the Saturday matchup. But you saw Brooksby play in the 2023 Australian Open, lost to Paul in straight sets, did not play again until 2025 Australian Open. So he did not play for about 2 full years, and he immediately came back and lost. So Brooksby had no warm-up matches, no anything, no challenger tune-ups. He showed up basically cold turkey to play against Fritz in the Australian Open, and that ended up working out terribly. But I'm kind of going to toss it out. Brooksby's been in better form. He looks great. And I do think that Australian Open matchup is very misleading because he had no actual preparation for Fritz. Now he does. He looks great on the courts. He's handled the win pretty well. And that win against Humbert was not fluky. He was fantastic. I see in the comment section, Rex is mentioning that Brooksby's serve in the ad court's been very solid, as well as the backhand for Brooksby. It's been very good. I think Brooksby is rock solid. I do think that Fritz can hit some errors. We saw that happen in the second set. Fokina was willing to come forward a bit. He was able to really put the pressure on. I think Brooksby can do the same. And if Fritz's first serve percentage is going to be dipping because of the wind, I think Brooksby has a chance to pull this off. Do I think he's going to win? I'll say no. I think Fritz rinse and repeats a 3-set win to a 4th title. If he won, though, I wouldn't be surprised, and I do think that Brooksby has the game to frustrate Fritz in these conditions. So for the actual price point, I don't see any value on Fritz. If you want to go for an angle on Fritz, maybe you'd go for the actual Fritz in 3 for an exact outcome. Or if you want to go for maybe going with the team total over for Fritz at 13, it's plus 105. You can probably find a juice 12.5 somewhere. I don't mind that. Maybe if you want to go for the over in sets at 2.5 at plus 153, I don't mind that either. But I do think for value, I don't see any on Fritz at minus 340. I think Brooksby can make this match competitive. I think he can borrow from the Fokina playbook to steal a set. And we have seen Fonseca win a set. We saw Fritz drop a set in every, once again, match of the event. And Fonseca has firepower, but no grass resume at all. And I do think Fritz was pretty fortunate. There was a suspension to the matchup once Fonseca had all the momentum. But Giron has been a fine grass player, not amazing. But the point is, stylistically, I do think Giron, you can argue, is kind of similar to Brooksby. And Fokina's got more firepower, but the same type of player. And I do think that Brooksby, if the backhand is on and the serve is continuing to not be a liability, it was a bit shaky against Humbert. But I do think Brooksby can make this match competitive. I think he can, in theory, win. I'll pick Fritz in 3, but give me the overs, and I'll go with Brooksby plus the games for this one. Anyway, time to move on into the actual Lock and Dog picks for the show. Before getting into the Lock and Dog, reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, Arc Fantasy, because they're doing Best Ball Mania, which is happening again all summer long. You could also they are giving away $15 million in prize. You could win up to $2 million for first place. No waiver wire, no arguments about trades. Best ball is the best way to play fantasy football. Also a great place for Pick'em. Sign up, though, for your new account with the code SGPN to claim a special pick and if first time that offer up to $1K in bonus cash on fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm because they just dropped Power Trends, which are a great undetected patterns feature. Rhythm's models have consistently one of a high ROI. Power Trends are updated every day, so it's Rhythm, no touts, no noise, it cleans out of my picks. Download the app, check out Power Trends, start betting smarter. Also try it out for free for a week by using the 7-day free trial. Go to sportsgamepodcast.com/rhythm to get your 7-day free trial. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Scam Podcast. Finished going through the preview. The matches on Saturday in the final in Mallorca and in Eastbourne. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I'm going to go with the matchup. I see Rex, by the way, mentioning that Fritz team total of 12.5 is minus 167. Bit expensive. I don't mind the 13 at even money or plus 105. Anyway, for the actual lock, I'm going to go back to Mallorca. Give me Greek Sport minus 1.5 games at minus 140. Yes, it is juicy, but is not as juicy as minus 178. I think if Greek Sport wins, he's covering, and I do think it's a good way to take 38 cents off. But Greek Sport, I think, is the better player in this event. He's not dropped a set yet. He's been quite comfortable against good competition, beating Diallo and beating Felix in straight sets, and Quinn, if you want to throw him in there too. He's been sharp. Moutet, though, has some nerves in his game for this one. First ATP title is on the horizon, potentially. First ATP final in about 5 years. Nerves could play a factor. I think he's had the easier competition up to this point. Greek Sport, though, did win both career meetings in straight sets a long time ago, but I do think the firepower should be on display for Greek Sport. I think his volleying will be on display. I think he will be willing to come forward, and I do think Moutet's variety can be questioned because he doesn't want to bring Greek Sport to the net, which does take away a bit of an element from his game. But Greek Sport, I think, is the better player. I think he's more comfortable in the event, and I think his serve should be the equalizer, or at least the advantage for him. But Moutet, I think nerves might play a factor. And I do think Greek Sport, in theory, can win a lopsided set, which might help out even if he loses the matchup. But I think Greek Sport should win. I'll take him at this, in my opinion, reduced price, going for the spread instead of the actual money line for this one. Anyway, moving on to the dog. I'm going to go to the matchup between Brooksby and Fritz. Give me Brooksby. Plus 3.5 games at plus 105. I like the price there. Brooksby's lost one set in the 4 main draw matches combined. Fritz, though, has lost at least one set in 4 straight, including the previous tournament where he lost to Moutet outright in London. Point is, though, you're looking at Brooksby, who's been in great form. He has been a guy who has looked very solid on the courts here. He's handled the win very well. The backhand's been great. The serve's been surprisingly good. And I think that Fritz, who's been punting sets left and right, should have a hard time covering 3.5 games. He might end up losing a set. So I see Brooksby keeping this match close. They split the head-to-head 1-1. We saw Brooksby beat Fritz in the past. He won't be intimidated in the spot. Did win a title on clay earlier this year. So this will not be Brooksby's first ever ATP title on the horizon. Think he'll look sharp here. I think Fritz might end up winning, but I think that covering the spread should be tricky. He needed a monster third set to cover the spread against Fokina in the last matchup. But you're looking at a spot where Brooksby, I think, is alive to win it. I think he's looking like a very, very worthy opponent in this matchup. And Fritz has been winning, but he's been sloppy. And I do think the win could impact him with the errors. Give me Brooksby plus the 3.5 games here at plus 105 as my dog. So once again, the plays here for the final matches in Mallorca and in Eastbourne. Lock's going to be on Greek Sport, minus 1.5 games here at minus 140. For the dog, give me Brooksby plus the 3.5 games at plus 105. It's going to wrap it up for the show. Back once again for Wimbledon. We have the men's and the women's preview episodes coming out. We'll do the men's episode first. That'll happen. Both of them should happen at some point tomorrow, but check out the podcast for 2 Wimbledon episodes. We will have lock and dog picks for both the men's and the women's first round matches. Keep that in mind. Until next time, I'm on Twitter Radio. Good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.